Got some thoughts on this game, I really do. Everyone keeps calling this a coronation. Michigan by double digits. The freight train rolls through one more time. 5 straight NCAA tournament wins by double figures. They scored 90 plus points in every single game. The number 1 team in Ken Palm. All those, just hand them the trophy. Like, I get it, I do. But if you've watched Dan Hurley in April, like, really, truly watch this group, you know this isn't a coronation until that final horn sounds. UConn is 6-0 all-time in national championship games. They are 13-1 lifetime in the Final Four. 19 straight wins past the second round of the tournament. The last team to beat the Huskies past the Sweet 16 was, well, nobody since 2009. Like, that is haunting. So Michigan might be the better team, but UConn might be the better tournament team. And tonight, those two things are going to be very different things, I think. But there's a few narratives that I think really define this game in a lot of ways. And, a lot of us are saying Michigan's unstoppable. This game is kind of just a formality at this point. They demolished Arizona by 18 in the Final Four. They beat Tennessee by 30-something in the Elite Eight. The scoreboard is an overwhelming evidence of what this team could be. And there is a world where they win this game by 20, and we just look back and say, like, guys, they were inevitable. We should have known that. Second narrative, Lendeborg's injury changes everything, I think. He sprained his MCL, rolled his ankle against Arizona. He played just 14 minutes, but Mara was brilliant in that game. But a less than 100% Yaks means that Michigan's best player and one of their better perimeter defenders could be compromised in ways that UConn, I think, can exploit, that I'll talk about in a second. And the third narrative I've seen around is UConn has to slow it down or they're dead. Michigan is 22nd in adjusted tempo. UConn is 319th. And I think that matters. 2 of Michigan's losses on the year came in games with 63 or fewer possessions. The pace battle is going to mean everything in this one. So let's look at Michigan. I wrote a preview for their Arizona game. Everything still applies, but the Final Four performance adds another dimension, I think. They didn't just beat Arizona, but they beat them without their best player for most of the first half. They led by 16 at the break. Mara was 11 for 16. That wasn't a fluke. It was a system that is very well designed, and they do a great job in a conceptual offense world. They run concepts, not a ton of plays like UConn does. They isolate on just 2.7% of their possessions. I think that matters. That's amongst the lowest in all of college basketball. They generate a lot of cuts. They generate some great spot-ups, transition opportunities. Truly, this is, you talk about a team that you want to have beat you in multiple ways. Michigan can do that. This defense is also number 1 in America. They allow just 44% from 2, one of the worst marks in all of college basketball, but their Achilles heel. Where are they vulnerable? The slow it down type of games. They lost their 2 slowest games of the year, arguably. Duke beat them in a 62-possession game. Purdue beat them in a 63-possession game. And then Iowa, that was a little bit of a scary game for them too, where it was a 65-possession game. They turned the ball over 18 times. Their transition game evaporated. They were forced into more of an isolation, half-court creation. Their system can create some things out of that, but May acknowledged it himself that, you got to compare UConn to Iowa. They have the physicality, they have the pace to create the type of game that Michigan does not want to play in. They operate on pace, space, flow, and you take that oxygen away from their offense, and it turns into a dramatically different game. So UConn can make this an ugly game. And for UConn, just forget the Ken Palm ranking for just a second. The numbers don't tell you what UConn actually is. They are a team that makes you play ugly, and then they thrive in that ugliness. They played 13 games this season at 63 or fewer possessions, 21 at 65 or fewer. They weaponize slowness. Their defensive identity has been insane. Different from past Hurley teams, I think. They're not going to win it just by these elaborate sets. They still are going to run a lot of them, that off-ball movement. I'll talk about that in a second. But this is a defensive group. After ranking 75th in defensive efficiency last year, they're back in the top 10. They limited Michigan State to less than 34% from the field. Illinois had a horrible game against them. They held all 5 tournament opponents to under 72 points. They are a team built on effort. Great job contesting. They're physical without fouling. And they just have high-level game planning where they can take away the things that you do best. Just watch the Illinois game. But here's where it gets interesting. UConn scores 9.3 points per game directly off of off-ball screens, which is second in all of college basketball. I'm talking ghost screens, back screens, stagger screens, rip screens, veer screen, any sort of off-ball action that you can run. It is deliberate, and they don't need to outscore you because their offense is designed to use the full clock and punish you for a rotation that could be a half beat slow. I'll get into some of the X's and O's in just a second, but who decides this game? I mean, it's Tarris Reed, number one. He's been the best player in the NCAA tournament, averaging more than 20 and 13 across 5 games in this tournament. How are they going to use him? I think you could see a lot of high pick and roll to try to draw Mara out of the paint quite a bit. That's a little bit of an obvious. Illinois tried to do that a little bit, wasn't as successful doing it. But where he can really be dangerous is in those off-ball gut pin downs that puts Mara in a really tough position. Those are the ones where you have a shooter running off, of 2, 3 different screens, like right up the middle of the court. And he's setting that pin, and because of the screening ability of him, you have to choose to say either I'm going to stick with my guy running off a pin down, whether that's a Mullins, whether that's a Karaban, whoever, or we can try to switch it. You're not going to switch it. Michigan is not going to switch it. So through that, I think he plays a dramatically big role because he's a gravitational center that allows their screening actions to function. And I think that's big. And there's a revenge game angle against his former team that I think you have to keep in mind as well. But for Michigan, obviously Yax is going to be the big who decides this game on how he plays on the defensive end of things. But let's talk about Morez Johnson a little bit. Chasing Karaban through that maze is going to be an interesting assignment because I think that's who he's going to end up matching up with in this one. So 3 X's and O's thing that I'm watching. The first thing, what I was just talking about, the screening maze versus Michigan's switching length. Michigan's switching creates an immediate tension if you have a situation where Johnson is able to run through a lot of those pin downs and chasing successfully throughout the game. It's in Michigan's favor. If not, and you have Amara having to switch onto a Mullins on up on a flare screen. If you have a situation where UConn can set really good hard screens, that means Michigan's length won't be able to contest some of these shots, and then you get switches, you get slips. It opens things up for UConn that they can do successfully that other teams were not able to do against this Michigan length. That is the window that Hurley's system is designed to find. Obviously, Lindenberg's health is a hidden variable. Not necessarily on offense. He can function basically as a stationary spot-up shooter, space the floor. I get that. That's fine. But if he's the one that has to start chasing a Karaban and a Mullins through some of these off-ball screens for 30 minutes, that requires lateral movement. That requires your knee to be stable and sustain effort. And if he cannot defend in space, that opens this game up for UConn dramatically. Michigan either has to pull him off of a Karaban assignment, which I think, like I said, is going to be Johnson. You put someone less equipped on it, or you live with a defensive leak in spots. Maybe you run a little bit of zone for stretches. Michigan doesn't like to do that. But if you want Yax on the floor, you might have to do that. Second thing, who wins the possession war? Michigan wants this game at 70 possessions. When the Wolverines play their pace, Ken Pom has them top 25 in adjusted tempo. That is where they want to live. 1.118 points per possession in transition. That is excellent. That is near the top of the sport. But UConn has 13 wins this season when games are in the 60 to 63 possession range. When you do that, you compress the game, variance decreases, individual possessions start to matter more, and because of UConn's elite defensive discipline, the way they're able to contest without fouling, the way they're able to force tough late clock shots, that is how UConn can win this game. Slow the game down, decrease the variance. I think that's that. I mean, the data is clear. Michigan lost 2 of its slowest games, but they can break the compression through turnovers. You've turned UConn over. You can get out in transition. Their defense has generated easy fast break opportunities time and time again. They did it against Arizona. If UConn turns it over even 12 times, 14 times, that is an extra 8 to 10 transition possessions, and when they're already exceptional in transition, that's the 10-point spread differential that you're looking for right there. Tarris Reed has been the best player in the tournament, and that's not hyperbole. This matchup matters in more ways than one. He's walking into the most imposing front court in college basketball. Mara just had the game of his life, 11-16 against Arizona. Michigan's defense allows only 44% in the paint, which is third worst in college basketball. Like, this is a big time matchup right here. UConn's plan is going to be simple. You're either going to throw Reed into pick and roll, screen and roll actions. You're going to pull Mara to the perimeter and then try to seal for deep position. You're going to go high-low in instances. You're going to see a ton of gut off-ball actions to try to get some deep post touches and maybe get Mara in foul trouble. If UConn can get Reed isolated against a smaller defender on a switch, a Burnett, McKinney, a Gale, after a switch, those are the buckets that they're going to be looked for. But for Michigan, they're going to keep Mara or Johnson on Reed at all times. They're not going to switch. And in some ways, they might say, hey, Reed, go ahead and go one-on-one against our 7+ footer. And we'll live with that the whole game. There's a foul trouble variable within this too, where UConn is sub 300 in both free throw attempt rate and defensive free throw attempt rate. They haven't attempted more free throws than an opponent since February 28th. In close games, I think that matters. If Mara and Johnson pick up early fouls, trying to contain Reed, Michigan's defensive identity shifts dramatically. And if Reed picks up early fouls, trying to match Michigan's physicality, UConn's entire offense collapses, and that's where Michigan can run away with this game. But if you strip everything down, it comes down to a simple question. Does UConn shoot well enough from three to keep this game close? Or does Michigan's defensive length smother those looks that they can get? UConn had 12 threes versus Illinois, but they've made double-digit threes just once the previous 6 weeks before that. Karaban and Mullins and Ball, if depending on how healthy he looks, combines to hit 10+ threes. UConn's live. Like, this is a game if they can. If they combine to hit 6 or fewer, Michigan wins by 15, 20 points. That's the game. Everything else is context. That is truly it, in my opinion. So my pick, I got Michigan 79-71. I think we see a pretty close game for the most part. The number started to work its way down to 6.5, but I do like Michigan quite a bit in this one. I trust the length. I think Michigan is the better basketball team, full stop. The question is not who is better. Michigan is better. But the question is whether UConn can drag this game into the mud, into the 60s, into a grind, into a half-court chess match. That's a very specific way that they have to win this game. I don't think that they're going to be able to do that for 40 minutes. So I'm going to take Michigan pulling away late. It's dangerous. Don't watch the scoreboard, but watch the possession count, because that might be the determinant in this game.